Yes. Okay. Okay. It is 7 p.m. We're calling a school committee meeting for October 10th to order. We have one remote participant, so we're going to have to do a roll call introduction and also certainly roll call today as well. So let's start with Sarah.
Here.
Erin?
Here.
Carla?
Here.
Tom? Here. Both Sean and Chuck have to give their regrets because they're unfortunately were both called away on business in an urgent manner. So apologies to all of our guests here as well with that regard. Quickly running down through the agenda, then we can jump in. So we will start with our public comment. If anybody here in the public wants to speak to anything not on the agenda, you're welcome to do so. We then have our Focus on Excellence, which is our National Merit Scholars, and that's what many of our audience members are here for. We're happy to celebrate you and the excellence that you have achieved. We'll then go through our consent agenda and vote on multiple different grants, acceptances, minutes, etc. A lot of donations there, really encouraging related stuff that's happening in that space. We'll move on to reports, and we forgot to notify the student, but nobody's going to object to having a student report as well on our reports. So we'll go through that. We'll then move to old business, which is to vote town meeting guidance on the Fieldhouse floor and bleacher capital plan. Anybody paying attention, that was voted at FinCom last night as well, but we wanted to add our 2 cents since it's a school-related event. And then new business, we have the 2024 MCAS result review, which will go through a bunch of areas, and we have the ACE committee discussion and assignment. And at that point, we will adjourn. Okay? All right, so let's start with a call for any public comment. Does anybody wish to say anything? Anybody on Zoom wish to say anything? And we don't have any public comment on Zoom. So, okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda, and we will actually not that, to our Focus on Excellence, the National Merit Scholars. So Dr. Milcheski, you want to start?
All right, good evening, everyone. Really nice to see so many folks here tonight to celebrate and recognize our 2025 National Merit Scholars. So we're thrilled that we had 9 National Merit Scholars, also 1 National Merit semifinalist, and we are excited to recognize and celebrate you tonight and make sure those who are watching at home get a chance to see some faces to the names of those who achieved this extremely high academic honor. If you're not familiar with the National Merit Scholar Program, the National Merit commended students are those who were in the top 2 to 3% of nationwide test takers on the PSAT, which it gives us in a pool of about 32,000 students nationwide. And we also then narrow that in half for the National Merit semifinalists. We have one tonight with us too, who's in the top 16,000 and will continue on in the program to potentially move on as a finalist as well. We would, on behalf of all of us, just like to congratulate all of you on the tremendous academic accomplishment, which, not only is it, we think, just one metric of your success, but we know reflects so many years of dedication and hard work and commitment to your studies, and it's a point of pride for not only for your families, but for our entire community. I hope that you also thank those who supported you in your journeys too, your families around you, and also all of your teachers who are a part of helping you to be so successful to this point too. I didn't tell you this, but when I call your name, I will embarrass you a little bit by asking you just to come up to the podium. If you could just share your name, if you could share anything that you're involved in at RMHS, whether that is a club, sport, activity, pathway, anything, and then also anything that you'd like to share about post-secondary plans. We don't need you to say a specific school, but if you want to say you're going into engineering, you plan to study computer science, at this point you still don't know, I think the community would be really excited to see sort of what some of our students are up to as well. So I'll just call you up one at a time. We'll give a round of applause, and you can come right up to here, and I have a certificate from the National Merit Scholarship Program that we will hand out after you get a chance to share a few words. So first up.
Just as a point of logistics, because people to see them, they need to be over here. So can I suggest that those of you that are National Merit Scholars and commended come up and stand over in this area, and then one by one, as Dr. Milcheski calls you, you come to this mic and do your name and all that kind of fun stuff that Tom said. Perfect. It's even more embarrassing.
I was going to say, he really wants to put you on the hot seat. He just upped it.
We really want to showcase your excellence if you're willing to do so. Yeah. So, that if those of you students, if you wouldn't mind, just come on over here, separating a little bit from the parents for the time being, and then when your name is called, do your little intro that Dr. Milcheski asked for.
And I appreciate Mr. Wise making sure that you're visible too. There are a lot of teachers who sometimes will watch at home and will be really excited to see sort of you up here being recognized. So first up to the hot seat, let's call up Vivian Bateman. So So if you just want to come.
This will get on the camera, which
Okay,
is what I
thank
want.
you.
Vivian, thank you and welcome.
Hi, I'm Vivian Bateman. I'm the president of the school's band program, and I'm also the president of the science team, and I'm the strategy lead of our school's robotics team. And I plan to major in biochemistry in college.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next up, Leo Diedrich.
Hi, I'm Leo Diedrich. I'm on the soccer and the swim team at RMHS, and I plan to major in electrical engineering in college.
Awesome. Next up, Kira Hart.
Hello, I'm Kira Hart. I'm in the improv club at school and also the president of the GSA and the co-president of the school's Dungeons and Dragons club. I plan on probably majoring in neuroscience in college.
Alistair Lyons.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alistair Lyons. I'm the current programming lead on the school's robotics team, the Robockets, and I plan on majoring in computer science.
Next up, Erica Malone.
Hello, my name is Erica Malone. I'm the drum major of our school's marching band, and I'm a member of science team and mock trial team. And I plan on studying data science in college.
And Rose Moran. Rose with us. Okay, well, we'll give a round of applause for Rose as well. All right. Eli Schenk.
Hello, I'm Eli Shank. I'm a member of our school's improv team, science club, or science team, and I'm a member of the RMHS Drama Club. I plan on majoring in either astronomy or astrophysics in college.
Next up, Catherine Stepler.
Hi, my name is Kate Stepler. I'm part of the soccer team, and I'm the captain of the winter track team. I'm also the president of Bridging Generations and the co-president of Girl Rising. And I'm planning on going to college and majoring possibly in economics or law.
And Quinn, Senate.
Hi, I'm Quinn Sennett. I'm a captain of the soccer team. I'm president of the choir program. I'm class vice president, and I'm a member of the drama club, and I plan on majoring in psychology in college.
And then last but not least, Sean Hoffman. And Sean is our National Merit semifinalist. So Sean does not yet have a certificate because we do not know yet if that'll be a semifinalist or a finalist certificate as well, too. So,
Hi, everyone. I'm Sean Hoffman, and I was recently chosen to be an officer of National Honor Society here at RMHS. And I'll probably be undecided in college, but we'll see where life takes me. So.
I think we'd also just like, obviously, what a tremendous academic accomplishment, but even more than that, hearing you speak about all of the ways that you are involved and leading in our community just makes your involvement and your leadership that much more impressive. So congratulations. Tradition we have when you come is to come on up, in addition to your certificate, to come have a picture with us, and then we'll be able to send you along. And congratulations.
And continue to thoroughly embarrass you.
Yes.
Come on down to the front, and parents will be ready for a picture if you want to. Dr. Carr, would you mind sending one and sending us? If you would mind. Ms. Callahan, please come down in front as well. Yeah, let's do 2 rows. A little bit of, Eli, good job, thank you.
More compact or good?
Stand on my tippy toes, be like, oh.
Yeah, hold them in front.
Block your face, don't block your face. That would be perfect, right? All right, anybody left? 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you. My name is
Congratulations.
Added up the point.
Yeah, I know Quinn because I'm from Wyatt. What'd you say?
I see it there, I see it there. Sarah, do you want to move? Do you want us to move down?
I don't know if it's still there. The future isn't really
The
good.
future's very bright.
listening to everything we're going to do. We're going to solve every problem with brains from a psychologist and neurologist perspective.
It's a really good comment, though. Like when we see like the world we live in, and then you see there's hope. And then some.
We're going to give them a second to clear out,
They're
Sarah,
awesome.
then we'll get started after that.
I'm gonna give this to you. Just mine. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to our consent agenda now, and we will start with a motion, then any discussion. So, Aaron,
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
seconded by Carla. Okay, any discussion or questions on the consent agenda? None? I have a couple of quick observations as I was going through this. So, some good, some bad. It's all great that we're getting the grants, but in terms of just comparison, I was looking at it year by year. So the Department of Health grant, well, it's $90,000, it's $21,000 less than last year, right? The Metco grant, well, it's $815,000, $699, it's exactly the same amount as last year, which in essence is a budget cut for us. The Title IV grant of $10,000 is exactly the same as well. The Title I grant is $3,000 more, so there's a small amount of increase there. The IDEA, which I assume is $262, the Part C grant is about $200 more. If I go down the list here, the regular IDEA grant is $23,000 less than last year, presumably because we have fewer kids qualifying, which might be a result of some of our regular general education stuff. We have about 1,000 less for Title II as well. So that was, as you go across that, grant numbers are dropping, which is a good sign because of why they're dropping in some cases, and a bad sign because it's a financial challenge we'll have to work our way through. So just FYI. And then I just wanted to also acknowledge and thank the administration for the follow-through on the Quebec field trip related questions that we had in our last full meeting on in September. Okay?
Just make one quick comment on that.
Sure, go ahead.
I was going to say too, just to make sure for those who may be watching not as familiar with some of those grants, that sort of, most of those are out of our control in terms of the amount of funding that we get on those. I think Tom's making a point of maybe, so we are as aggressively as we can pursuing grants too, and most of these are grants that sort of are a formula based off of sort of various information too. So just to make sure for those who may not be familiar with some of those, more ongoing grants.
Carla?
And to piggyback off of that, we did, Tom and I, and along with Curtis, went for the METCO grant, where METCO headquarters and a bunch of leaders in the area went to do a presentation to our delegate to advocate for not for more money, at least to take inflation into account.
Unfortunately, it didn't happen
It
this
didn't
time.
happen, but we tried.
Yeah.
That was over.
I think I'm still waiting on the answer of what happened there. I've asked. I'll keep pressing, but it is what it is. So, okay. And no further questions, and we'll do a roll call vote. Just real quick, any further questions or comments? All right, seeing none. Sarah?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Tom? Yes. Thank you to all those who have donated and continue to donate. I like the photography stuff that's happening. That's going to be an exciting class that's going on there as well. So, all right, moving on to our reports. And while not listed, I'm going to ask our students for a report. So Sachi, start us off.
Okay, hi. It's nice to see you all again. I'm really happy to be back. So yeah. For starters, just updates and upcoming events. We'd like to start by first thanking the PTO for the new tables on Main Street with charging stations for students. Thank you. With charging stations for students and for their commitment to purchase an additional set of tables for the other side of Main Street. This will serve as functioning seating for students throughout the school day, during lunch, and after school. Thank you, thank you. And then after that, we have on the 10th, which I believe is that today? Yes, it is today. Okay. Sorry. So tonight, we actually have the financial aid night for RMHS, which was this evening, put on by the school counseling office. On the 23rd of October, we have the PSAT during the school day for grades 10 and 11 test takers. Yay me. And then we have on the 29th, the National Honor Society induction ceremony. The 31st, term 1 grades close. At the beginning of November, term 2 begins. Report cards will be published in the portals on November 8th. November 15th, there will be a virtual parent-teacher conference, and from November 22nd to November 27th will be Spirit Week. Very excited. And then some updates, like from me specifically, student advisory met today for kind of like the first time where we actually discuss issues. We have a lot of new members. I think last year we only had about like 12. I think now we have like 20 all across all 4 grades, which is fantastic. We have so many new perspectives. One of the big issues we were talking about was AP classes for underclassmen as we struggle to compete with other colleges. Not other colleges, other high schools, because their students are allowed to take AP classes from freshman year. And obviously, getting into college is very competitive nowadays, so that was a big thing. And then aside from that was the modern classroom approach, which is a new approach that's been taken by teachers, where basically they upload videos. It's very self-paced. It's all self-paced, actually. They upload videos, give you packet work to do, and you basically work on that in class. There are very lenient deadlines, mastery checks, and a lot of students were very unhappy with the way that that's been going for them, I myself being one of them. So that's one thing. And then, just a fun side note, this is completely irrelevant, but I started a henna club at school. It's meeting tomorrow for the first time. We got 40 people to sign up. I was very excited, and I was recently asked by I think one of the heads of the METCO program, if I could make it to the METCO events to do henna for people there. So I thought that would be a really amazing, super fun experience. So I thought I'd just mention that. So yeah, that's it for reports.
I'm going to ask a naive question. What's henna?
Oh, so
The hand stuff?
yeah, so it's basically a
Okay.
Middle Eastern / widely popular, I think more popular in India and stuff, or that's where people know where it's from.
Okay.
That's like made from plant and sugar, and it's very all natural, yeah. No chemicals, and it's kind of like a paste that goes into a cone tube, and you put it on your hand and do designs, and you wait until it dries, and then you wipe it off, and it leaves a stain for about like 1 to 2 weeks. So the club only meets once a month, but it's just meant to be like a really relaxing sort of thing. It meets Friday mornings at 8 a.m. You could come listen to music. There'll be munchkins, and you can learn how to do henna. Yeah, that was the main, like, enticing thing.
It's all about the munchkins.
Yeah, exactly. The food, yeah. So, yeah.
Well, great. Can you talk a little bit more about your challenges at the Modern Classroom?
Yeah, so, okay, so from what I heard from a lot of, I think they're, sophomores, is that for their history class, and this was widespread, like they were getting 20-page packets at the beginning of the week, and it would be, they'd have to annotate and read it, and then they'd go into class, and the teacher would be like, oh, work through some questions with your partner, or whatever, and there would be no answers, like the teacher would not go over those questions whatsoever, so they didn't know if their answers were right, so when they went to go take the mastery check, which is basically kind of like a quiz on the material with like, I don't know, I want to say 3 to 10 questions. The only like knowledge that they had as to whether they were right or not was based on their notes. And because the teacher never went over those notes, they had no idea whether they were right or wrong. So taking those mastery checks, students were not doing well. And unfortunately, I think specifically for this history class, it was like out of 5 points. So you start getting 3s or 4 out of 5 points, and those tend to add up for the quarter, and they tend to like lower their grade quite a bit. So that's a big issue. And then in my personal experience, I'm taking AP Physics 1 this year, which I like it totally interested in physics. Like it's not like I don't want to take it, but I found that he uploads videos, and I really struggle to grasp the content and remember it because it's all like part of a unit in 1 week. And it's like, do 1.1 this day. There's a loose structure to it, and I think what a lot of students are really struggling is like with is like how to retain this information, because you do one assignment like one day, and then you take the mastery check the next day, and then that's it, right? I think big struggle is just we're not learning, like, it's not hands-on whatsoever. It's all self-paced. Students are struggling with accountability. And accountability is a huge important skill for students to learn, but I don't know if any of you know Clara Healy, but she was talking about how, like, for her, you can put the work off for a day, but then that starts to build up, and that starts to, like, really burden some students, the amount of work. So what we said were there were definitely some pros, being self-paced. If you're a fast learner, it's really useful for you. You can get ahead. But for people like me who tend to understand a lot better when it's being explained to you, when there are in-class discussions about the material, when the teacher is teaching it to you and you can ask questions immediately, it's definitely a struggle. So we were talking about how we can find a happy medium between that, because it benefits some students and it really hinders quite a lot of other students. But the general consensus was that it seems to be doing a lot more harm than good, even though it has its benefits. So, yeah.
Thank you for the detail and the answer.
And you choose these classes?
So, well, first of all, I had no idea it was going to be structured like this, but yes, so I chose to take AP Physics 1. I also chose to take a few other APs. This is the only one that's really structured like this. And I had no idea that it was going to be structured like this, so.
You chose the content, you didn't choose
Yes, I didn't choose the teaching style.
The delivery method, yep. Okay. Any other questions for Sashi? I think it's valuable feedback to get that kind of feedback. And I'm sure Ms. Callahan was
She was definitely-
eyes and ears wide open
Yeah.
as you were going through it.
Absolutely. I do want to emphasize, though, like, what we were saying was we completely understand, like, this might be a lot easier for teachers because then they get a lot more time during class, because students are just working on the work that they posted. They get a lot more time in class to grade work, to plan, future online lessons. But I think when it really comes down to it is, are the students learning the material that they need to be learning, and are they remembering that material so that it can be used for, I have to take the SAT this year. If my math class was structured like this, I don't think I'd be able to retain this information to take the SAT. So it's kind of just become this issue of like, can we retain this? Are students like really learning the material, even though it might be easier for teachers? So, yeah, I think that's the big issue.
Okay, great. Thank you for the feedback.
Yeah.
Hearing such a too, you may be helpful at some time too, the high school can come speak a little bit about sort of what, the modern classroom, work looks like, what that, how it may be different. It might be important for the community hall here too, and if anyone watching tonight wants to learn a little bit more, it is not just an RMHS thing in some pockets, but it's also, see nationwide. So use Google the modern classroom, you can kind of see, learn a little bit more about the model that Sachi's, talking about, so, kind of some of the pros and cons too. So appreciate you sharing that feedback, and also maybe we can then commit to bringing some of the high school leaders in and talk about that a little bit and some lessons learned and things like that too.
Yeah. Oh, we also did just hold elections for board members to come here, so you guys are gonna have 3 new faces coming, hopefully. So yeah, besides me and Tamia, who are the board members from last year, so.
Awesome.
Awesome. Great. Okay, so moving down the list, Dr. Hardy.
Good evening, everyone. 2 quick updates. The first one's really quick. I just wanted to let everyone know that we have received in the individual student MCAS results. We are in the process right now of putting each and every one into an envelope, and our hope is to get those mailed out to families around the 18th. We're working, our building secretaries are busy supporting this work, and we will get those out to folks very soon. That will have detailed information for families about their individual child's performance. Tonight, obviously, we're going to talk in broad strokes about the district-wide performance. The other thing I wanted to mention is to let you know that we have launched one of the professional learning initiatives that we had talked with you about in the spring, and this is in the form of having literacy leaders at the elementary level. We have 16 teachers, K to 5, who have taken on this role. And what this means is that they are coming together at regular intervals over the course of the year and receiving more intensive training, and in particular, thinking about, as you know, we've talked about this many times, when we've implemented the ARC core curriculum in literacy, it's not just about that material that we're using, it's about the instructional shifts for teachers and how they're teaching literacy. And so this work is really to provide each of our schools with a small group of teacher leaders who have even deeper training in the instructional shifts, who also can work together to help calibrate across schools and across levels. We had the first meeting this week, and we are breaking it up so that right now K to 2 teachers are working together, and then 3, 4, and 5 are working together. I had the privilege of sitting in, and wow, it's so amazing to hear our teachers articulating how they are instructing students in literacy, what their questions are about formative assessment, how that relates to the particular skills that they know their students need to master when they're on grade level, if there are students that are struggling, or even for our students that are coming in above grade level. So we're really confident that this team of teachers is going to be helpful in sort of helping us take the next step with ARC Core. Now that we have a solid baseline of implementation, we're really ready to go deeper. And this is a strategy that we're employing, is to really train teachers as leaders.
And we're using Hill for literacy as part of that, or are we doing,
So this
what's
is,
our
so
implementation plan?
An ARC coach is running this because it's not disconnected, it's not curriculum agnostic. We really are looking at what are the particular skills that we're seeing that are taught, and then how are teachers translating that into practice.
Okay. Any questions? No. Dr. Milczewski?
Just 2 thank yous to our 2 operational departments in the district. First, a huge thank you to our IT team. As we know, we've been navigating IT outages and then the corresponding restoration process. I'd like to thank starting by thanking Julian Carr for his leadership in this process. I think that he's been working tirelessly to make sure that we are up and running as quickly as possible and smoothly as possible with all, kind of high stakes for everyone too, and just really appreciate his work, his leadership, and thank the entire IT team who have been working behind the scenes to do everything they can to get things back up and running for students, staff, and for the community. So IT team and Julian, we really appreciate you and your leadership. The other group I'd like to thank is our food service team. They, as you know, this year is the first year that we have free breakfast for all students across all of our schools. Just in the month of September, we expected, I would say, when we had sat down at the beginning of the year, maybe 60 to 70 kids per school per day to be launched. We're excited to share that we had close to 14,000 breakfasts served throughout September, and then as the number continues to rise. So I think the food service team is doing a great job keeping up with that increasing demand, which is going up by the day. I'd say they're also doing a great job keeping up with USDA regulations, which now limits the amount of sugar in both yogurts and cereal in terms of what they can have, so kind of shifting menu offerings to align to those regulations, and also continuing to shift kind of what's offered for students in a way that makes it, both healthy and engaging and aligned to students' interest too. So huge thank you to the food service team. They're doing an amazing job launching that program and building it as they go too.
Okay, great. Any questions for Dr. Malachewski? You can add, go for it.
Kids are actually really happy with the food that's being served. Like, I was talking to people about it, and they're saying it's so much better than it was last year, and that I also got breakfast this morning with a bunch of friends, and it's been really good. So just positive, yeah, people really like it.
Thank you for sharing that.
Good stuff. Okay. Moving on to liaison and subcommittee reports, and we'll start virtually with Sarah.
No report.
No report. And Carla?
I will just highlight for Killam, there's 3 community meetings coming up. October 23rd, it is on the site and community use. So people can come and listen to, it's 7 o'clock. They're all in Reading Public Library. And we'll talk about community use, so how the community can utilize that space and that building as well. November 4th, it's on traffic, everybody's favorite topic, traffic flows, and December 9th is on sustainability. So sustainability is the big talk now for the next few months.
Okay. Are there any big decisions coming up?
No, we will be doing a presentation for FinCom, just an update in a couple of Wednesdays.
What the next,
I have to find out what they are looking for. And then we are, by October 30th, the MSBA is going to decide if we are going to be able to move into the schematic design phase of the project. So we have no reason to believe that won't happen, and they don't either. We're kind of going back and forth with them right now on questions they have from our last PSR submission. So they just sent us back more information, and we're supposed to get them answers back this week as well. So we're on target, we're on schedule for everything.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Erin?
I was going to talk about that, but I'll let you go ahead and talk about it. So no report.
So first things first is to acknowledge that that October is Dyslexia Awareness Month. And as part of that, in addition to just the greater need for understanding the right to read, next Tuesday night, CPAC, the school committee, Friends of Reading METCO, and Reading Cultural Council are sponsoring and supporting the viewing of the award-winning documentary, The Right to Read. That will start approximately 6 p.m. here in the PAC, and it's registration requested. There's a QR code on the event that we posted on our school committee page. The CPAC has posted it. I think Friends of Reading METCO has sent it out. Decoding Dyslexia just posted on their page today. Some of the other special education related sites have sent it out. We've heard from North Andover Special Education, Lexington Special Education, and a few other places. So hopefully it'll be well attended. I know at least one of, if not more than one of our local delegates will also be attending that event. Following the viewing, we will have a panel of experts to discuss the topic and work it through. Catherine Tarka, who is the Director of Literacy and Humanities at DESE, will be here as one of those members. Mike Moriarty, who is a board member on the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, and probably one of the most vocal voices for reading, in particular the science of reading, will be there. And we'll also be joined by Millie Arbaje Thomas. I'm probably mispronouncing her last name. Arbaje Thomas, who is the president and CEO of METCO. So it'll be a good combination of people with different backgrounds and different perspectives to talk through the video. And of course, we'll open the audience to questions afterwards. I'll be moderating that panel as we go through it. So really looking forward to that, and it would be I think it's going to be a really great event overall. I also will highlight that in November, Dr. Hardy and Dr. Stice, I think, will be coming in to talk a little bit through some stuff that we're doing in the district to help and support and raise reading across our district, some of which we'll probably talk a little bit tonight as well as we go through some of the related MCAS materials. So there's kind of a follow-on type event there that's going to happen as a result of that too. So that's that. In addition to that, FinCom last night voted unanimously 8-0 to support 3.5% use or allocation of free cash, which amounts to $5.8 million to the operating budget for 2026 from a 2026 budget perspective. And they also voted 8-0 to support one of the articles we're reviewing tonight as well, the Fieldhouse floor. So that was great as well. So, okay. All right. Moving on then, we will move to said old business and start with the town meeting guidance on the Fieldhouse floor and bleacher capital plan update. And Dr. Milczewski. Great. The presentation over here is the MCAS one.
I think if you just minimize it, it should be on the desktop.
Okay. Fieldhouse floor, there it is.
Want me to click through?
Share screen. Okay, do you got this?
Great.
Sorry, Aaron.
You're fine.
All right, thank you. All right, appreciate having the opportunity tonight to speak briefly about the RMHS Fieldhouse project. I'm also joined tonight by Joe Huggins, Director of Facilities. Joe, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. So a little bit of context on the project. Here we go. Back in April town meeting, debt was authorized at $1.7 million to replace the Fieldhouse floor and bleachers at RMHS. We did share at that time too, through the design process, we explored other options that ended up being more expensive, but what we thought was a preferable option, then we would come back in front of town meeting in November and ask for additional funding. So over the last couple of weeks, this was introduced to a select board. Select board did not have this presentation when they had made a vote on this. Therefore, myself, Joe, others put together this presentation, presented this last night at FinCom, and then had what was unanimous support from FinCom too. Joe and I will be presenting this back at select board. A few of them had asked if you come back before and share the same information that you're sharing both with FinCom and with select board too. So we are here because we, at this point, have a different design outside of the 1.7 million, which would be the like and kind for the Fieldhouse floor. So Joe and I tonight Joe will give an overview of where have we been during this design process, what are our options, and I'll walk you through sort of why we are narrowing in on wood maple as the preferred surface. So Joe, do you mind walking everyone through a little bit of where we are?
Sure. So, like Tom said, we originally came forward with the estimate of $1.7 million to replace the floor, the center court, the track, and the bleachers in kind. And when I say in kind, with a similar product that is just a newer version of what we have out there right now. We also, at April town meeting, let people know that we were going to be looking at some other options. And one of the other options was looking at a higher quality center court, which would be either in kind, or which we are leaning towards, which is the maple. We've been doing a lot of research. Tom himself and the athletic director have traveled to different places to look at different products. And one of the challenges with this project is that in order for us to put a maple center court in there or any other wood style surface, the entire center court of the field house the slab itself needs to be depressed down at least 1 to 2 feet, which is quite a process to do that, and then build up the hardwood floors, the sleepers, everything that goes underneath up level with the track around it. So we went around and we were looking at several different schools and that had a similar type of thing, and the maple seemed to be make the most sense other than a synthetic wood floor. The reason it carries more money is that depressing the center court itself carries a big number in the price. You can imagine what we're going to have to do is demo the bleachers, demo the floor, cut the center court out, and then dig down, and then there's going to be a period of time we're going to have to wait while the concrete cures, and then go back at it and then begin the installation. So that's the reason why this price has escalated primarily, is because to go with a maple floor, we need to depress the slab. We also looked at another option, which was, in fact, not depressing the center court, but rather putting the center court on top of the existing slab. But as you can imagine, that court would now be sitting up higher, okay? And then we'd have to build the floor up to that. And then at all the doors in the field house, we'd have transitions going out, which would not work for us because we'd be encroaching in on runoff for the courts as well as the track itself. So that's why the option we're looking at is to press the slab to put the maple flooring in there. What we have now, like on this slide you're looking at right now, is foam back vinyl, which is a different product, and Tom's going to get into what the benefits of what we have now as opposed to the maple floor. So that's really where we are. And also, I should mention that the bleachers will be getting replaced as part of this project that are ADA compliant, which what we have now is not ADA compliant. So that's what I have. That's where we are, and that's the reason why this is partially taken so long, is because we've been doing a lot of research and getting everything in line to make sure that our design is spot on.
I have this question here. Yep. So Joe, I think one of the other historical questions we've had about the floor in the field house was water, right?
Yep.
And underneath the floor, water was creeping up and underneath. So the plan here is going to address that issue as well as part of the reconstruction of it?
Yeah, part of the project a big part of the project is to demo the existing floor, shot blast it, fix any cracks in the slab that we find, and then do a waterproofing of the existing concrete, and then begin the installation of the track, and then the center court. So that's the moisture mitigation that we're going to do. I believe that the existing surfaces would probably have lasted longer if that had been done during construction of the original project, but fortunately it was not. So we are doing moisture mitigation.
Okay. Get clarification on the center court as well, Joe. If I'm thinking about the field house, we have the track around it. Then you have I would consider center court, which is the main basketball court. But you have essentially 3 horizontal basketball courts that are smaller that go through the center court. 4 is it 4?
Yep.
So are we talking about basically the entire court area inside the track? Or are we talking about just the main court, the main large court that's going to be depressed?
The entire court, which is around 7,000 square feet, the whole entire thing. And we've involved the athletic director. As a matter of fact, obviously he's going to be heavily involved in the project. They were out here last week taking measurements to make sure things line up with the existing backboards and everything like that. And final striping and everything like that, and logos and all that will be run through the school department so that the end product comes out the way we want.
Okay, you just hit on another topic that was a bit of a sore thumb when it came to the football field, the logo. Are we actually going to be able to get the R with a rocket instead of just an R?
I'm going to push for it.
I don't know why we didn't get it on the football field for that. I mean, I'd love to have it back on the football field at some point. Okay, thanks, Joe.
And I'll be honest that Joe and I have not gotten that far versus me.
I know you are, but
vinyl.
Just little details like that make a difference.
In the moisture issue, go ahead, Joe.
Right now we're designing. Right now we're continuing to design as though we're going to be replacing it with the more expensive version. If this doesn't go through, town meeting, we can always pull back and use the in-kind design, but we're moving forward like we're doing the full-blown, the more expensive version. The construction documents, the bid documents should be done sometime early December. And then we will be going out to bid, if everything goes as planned, which it should, sometime right after the new year, which is a great time to do that because you want to line contractors up for the summer season to do this.
What's the construction duration?
We're talking about, and we've already blocked off the field house all of June, July, August, and into September. We're hoping, we've had discussions, Tom and I have had discussions, Tom M., with the architect about any opportunity we get to accelerate the schedule, we will. We're hoping to be done sometime mid-September on this. And it's also understood that there could be graduation going on in there, so whether, depending on the weather.
We actually have the start date mapped out as the Monday after graduation, so.
Yep.
Do we have, speaking of that and other potential uses, do we have any potential election to think about in June from Killam's perspective? The vote? Something to consider at some point, right? Whether we do it in the field house or whether we do it at town hall, but there might be something to think about that might address that timeline too. So, okay, sorry, Tom and Joe, keep going.
No, thank you, Joe. So I think Joe shared a little bit about why the maple surface would be more expensive given the depressed slab. I'm going to speak a little bit too in terms of why, we are recommending the more expensive option too. I think the first thing I'd just like to emphasize, which is known for the community, is that this is the field house gets a ton of use, right? The field house gets a ton of use during the day for our students in PE class, after school for our athletic teams who use it consistently, whether it's unified cheer, dance, basketball, volleyball, indoor track, plus any day with inclement weather, is a lot of student athletes in there. And then, is also rented out consistently, usually every day up till 9:30 p.m. And even on the weekends during a peak Saturday of, Reading Rec basketball, Jim Sullivan, estimates that there's between 500 and 600 players and they're using it. So I just want to make sure as we go into talking about safety and talking about durability, we're keeping in mind the wide amount of users and also the consistency with this gym is used, which I think heightens the need for us to invest in a surface that is the safest and the most durable surface, which I'll get into right now too. I apologize, this slide came out a little bit weird on Google Slides too, but the summary of this slide is that we think that the differences between investing in the wood slide and the wood surface and the foam back vinyl mainly come down to 3 safety factors and 3 other factors, which we call quality factors, which I'll get into tonight. Last night at FinCom, Joe and I were joined by Rob Belkner from FJ Roberts Sports Surface. He came on and was able to speak to a lot of the technical pieces too. So if I will do my best, and Joe will tonight, to speak to some of the technical pieces on the surface. But if you want to go back and watch last night's video, it might also add a little bit more depth to some of the things that we'll talk about tonight. And I'll channel the feedback we got from last night to kind of open, which was feedback from Joe Carnahan and Marianne Downing, which said, if you led with the kind of the headlines of us wood is going to last potentially 2.5 times as long, and it's something that's going to be significantly safer for our community, right? It seems like it should be something that is an easier conversation to be had. But let me talk through some of the safety factors first. So one of the main factors looked at when looking and assessing field house or floor surfaces is shock absorption. You can see sort of having an ideal shock absorption percentage of 50% is ideal, and comparing the foam back vinyl to wood athletic, pretty significant difference of 22 to 33% absorbed for foam back vinyl, 46% for a wood athletic. Why this matters, our consult, so FJ Roberts and other sort of research shows that the shock absorption ties most closely to, or connects most closely to, overuse injuries too. So if we are the better the shock absorption percentage, the better chance we have to reduce overuse injuries that a lot of our student athletes have been nagging with. This is not the factor that deals with sort of the catastrophic injury, which we'll get into in a minute. Other surface, obviously, energy return, wanting, and FJ Robertson categorized the energy return on a foam back vinyl surface as okay versus very good on wood athletic. If you see that kind of on the previous, we were talking about shock absorption, you can see that even if there's like an imbalance between shock absorption and energy return, so like even if something's pretty high with shock absorption and energy return's not there, it's going to be like the experience of running in sand, right? So it's not only, which obviously that has an impact on both the quality of gameplay and safety too. So they are saying that while you obviously want a high shock absorption percentage, it's also important that there's a high energy return as well to make sure you're getting optimal play and optimal safety. With all of that said, the factor that matters the most to me, and I think the factor that matters the most to others in the field who I've talked to, is elasticity. Surfaces are, kind of on a spectrum. It's not either, is it area, is it binary, is it an area surface, or is it a point surface, but generally on a spectrum, with wood representing the top of the top in terms of quality of a area surface, foam back vinyl being more on the point side, but also not on the extreme end of that spectrum. Why does this matter? You see kind of the top bullet. So area elastic floors are preferred for pivot sports, basketball and volleyball. Research shows that when you have a higher level of elasticity, better elasticity, that's the factor that reduces catastrophic knee injury or catastrophic ankle injury. The reason being sort of what you look here kind of on a couple of the bolts, what happens to your foot when you're pivoting into the ground, right? Is your foot feel like it is stuck when you're trying to pivot? If someone comes down from a rebound, is there any give? If someone's cutting or turning, is there any give? Or does your foot feel like it's stuck? Now, talking to our coaches here, both basketball and volleyball coaches, unfortunately, some of the recent knee injuries that we've had students have said, or the videos have shown, it feels like if someone is stuck, right? That feeling, that's the thing that concerns us most. So I would say we want to invest in a surface that we know is for us an area surface, which we know is best, will give us the sort of the best quality in terms of elasticity. That kind of gives them, just to kind of back up on the safety factor for a minute too, is that I've had people say, well, is our current surface unsafe, right? What I'll share back is that I know that we have had, probably like any community, overuse injuries and catastrophic injuries on our surface, probably like anywhere. I can't sit here and attribute those one-to-one for that being the floor being the reason for those injuries. But what I can share is that I feel like we have the opportunity here to invest in a surface that we know is safer for our student athletes. There is a clear difference in terms of the safety level of a wood surface versus a foam back vinyl surface. That's what you'll see here. That's what you'll see if you do any of your research on your own. Therefore, given some of the challenges that we have seen, given the opportunity to be able to invest in what we know is a much safer surface, this is an opportunity for us to be able to ensure our community that those participating in our facilities are working on the safest of surface and have the best chance to avoid injury if at all possible. 3 quality factors that don't have to do with sort of just the safety, which, kind of court handles rolling loads better. So if we're rolling out equipment that needs to be able to, someone get up on a lift to be able to fix something up on the roof, those surfaces are going to be able to better handled by wood surface. They'll be able to hold up a little bit better against some of those non-athletic activities that have, heavier, kind of weight-bearing machinery. Other factor is then, again, I talked about safety, is durability. We think we're going to make an investment. We want to make sure that there's something here that's going to last. You'll see that we can safely assume that a foam back vinyl surface would last about 20 years versus a wood athletic surface that would last close to 50 years. Last night, Rob Belkner from FJ Roberts shared that there's no reason that number couldn't be 70 or 80 years with a wood surface if it's well maintained. I said if it's well maintained. That gets into what I think are a couple of the drawbacks of the wood surface. One, it has higher annual upkeep to make sure that it remains in good surface than a foam back vinyl surface would. Joe and the team last night spoke about how they do maintain wood surfaces in many of our buildings. They feel comfortable that they are able to do that, but it is a higher level of demand on our facilities team. Other thing, 2 spots that, I think are especially, dangerous for a wood surface. One, Tommy hit on water leakage. Any sort of catastrophic water, flooding would be really difficult to navigate on a wood surface, especially when compared to a foam back vinyl surface. So that's sort of one thing to keep in mind. And the other thing, which we talked about last night at length, was humidity too. So it is in surfaces where you cannot control the humidity as well. A wood surface is more susceptible to or buckling when compared to a foam back vinyl surface. Now, FJ Roberts and Joe would both share that the biggest factor in being able to control humidity is being able to get air moving. And Joe and the team feel like in the field house floor, while it can get hot in there, they do have the technology and the equipment to be able to move air relatively well. Also, last night we talked about how if the surface is installed well at the front, that will limit the impact of some of the challenges you may face with humidity. So it's not only managing the humidity, but it's also ensuring the quality of the installation right up front. And then last but not least, on another option or some other benefit I feel like from the wood surface is just the aesthetics. We are a community that takes great pride in our facilities. We're a community that takes great pride in our athletic programs, our community programming. Out of the 11 other Middlesex League high schools, 10 out of the 11 currently have or are in the process of putting in a wood surface. So this is what we would believe is sort of the norm for a high school of our size, of our stature, of our competitive level, and think that therefore, given the pride that we take in all of this, all of our facilities, this is sort of aligns with what we think the quality of our programming is, the quality of our facilities are. Joe outlined up front the difference between the 1.7 and the $3 million cost. Just like to emphasize, again, the primary reason for this more expensive option and us recommending this is the safety risk, the safety in ensuring that anyone who uses our gym is using the safest quality of, the best quality of floor. Secondly, we feel encouraged by what we believe would be a much more durable surface and one that would last much longer to allow us to gain some more return on our investment as well. I'll turn over to Joe, just if you want to chime in anything that I missed, and then we'll open up for questions.
I think we're good. I think you pretty much covered everything.
All right, any questions from the committee that we haven't already asked? Carla?
Just a couple for you, Joe. In terms of roof leaks, have all of those been fixed? Do we have any issues right now with water leaks on the court?
That's already being taken care of. I mean, the roof is 18 years old up on the field house and the main building. And we have a service contract with a roofing contractor that comes through and does preventive maintenance every summer on the roofs before we get into the winter season. We just did it last summer. We're planning on doing another big PM up there in the late spring of the field house roof. The roof is in good condition, I will tell you that, but like any flat roof in New England, you can get water infiltration, but we fix stuff immediately. We're on top of it.
Okay, and then can you just
outline just quickly what the maintenance requirements, like what do you have to do for maintenance for it?
The gym floors that we do have in the district that are wood, depending on which floor it is and depending on which building, depending on the use, some get refinished every single summer. Some we have on a every other year program because of the use is less. Something like this, I would imagine, is going to get done every single summer, which is going to be basically not sanding the floor, but just giving it a light screening and recoating it every summer. And then on top of that, as part of the project, we're going to be purchasing matting that will cover the entire center court. We're going to have to do that, especially now because we have foam back vinyl, which is a little more resilient in terms of, with voting going on out there and everything. We cover the floor for a lot of large events like robotics, but we'll be covering this maple flooring more frequently now with this new matting we're going to be purchasing through the project.
That's what made me think of it, like people
who rent it over the weekend. Like, what are the restrictions we put on them of things they can or can't do on the floor?
If it's an athletic event, I can tell you that, obviously they don't allow any cleats in there and things like that. If it's anything, we don't allow, and we have not allowed for a long time, people putting tape down on the floor to tape lines down because that can pull the finish up. So in the rental agreement, there are restrictions on what they can touch in the facility, and that's one of the things we would not let people touch. Kevin Gerstner, who is our facilities manager for the school department, has a good handle on, the use and what things they can bring in and what they cannot bring in. We would never let anybody bring anything in there, rolling anything heavy across the floor unless, and this is with the current system, unless it was protected. So we're on top of that pretty well.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I don't have a question, just comment.
Go for it.
So this is a no-brainer for me. I mean, I think it can't be emphasized enough, the volume of students that access this. I dropped my 12-year-old off there tonight because his basketball league practices there 2 nights a week. That's one 12-year-old team. So I think, basketball is no longer just a winter sport. It is year-round. And I imagine that the majority of kids in the district have a reason to access that space at some point or another. I'd like to think if the select board had access to this level of detail, that they would get behind this as well. And I'm confident that the town meeting will as well. So I appreciate the time that went into this presentation. Because, if you start off with 3 million, it's like, what? Why did it nearly double in cost? But the second you lay it all out, for all the reasons, the longevity, the safety, I would really love to see this done this summer. So thank you.
Okay. Joe, Tom, thank you for the time and energy put into this. Looks like we have one question coming up here in a second. Just real quick, another topic we talked about that is to make sure the public is aware of will be things like what kind of hard balls can be used inside the gym as well, right? So if it's used over the winter for, say, baseball or softball practice, then they have to change the balls they use. It won't be able to be the hard balls they use. So that's another kind of material purchase that we're going to have to go through as a district from an athletic department perspective, but anybody else who comes in would have to make sure they adhere to those kind of restrictions as well, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Dr. Corum, you said you look like you have a question or a comment.
Jeffrey Corum, Ridge Road. Just hearing again that going down 2 to 3 feet, are we confident that we won't hit any ledge or anything? There won't be a problem digging down that far underneath?
Joe, did you hear the question?
No, I did not. I couldn't hear him.
Okay, his question is, since we have to go down 2 or 3 feet, are we confident, or do we have any concerns about hitting any ledge or anything else that might raise the cost to blast anything out there? Or you already mentioned you're planning to blast.
Well, what we're planning on doing, if we're going this route, is we're going to do a test bore behind the bleachers. First of all, to confirm how thick the slab is. Well, we think we know how thick it is right now, but, the drawings are from 1970, I want to say, in the 70s. So we want to test and see how thick the slab is. And once we start going into it, they're going to be saw cutting the slab and then probably using like an attachment on a Bobcat, like almost like a hoe ram or something like that to break it up. It's going to be quite noisy in there while they're doing this, but that type of work won't be happening until after the kids get out of school. So.
Okay. I had one more question thinking about the water issue. Is there anything we can do or are doing, since essentially it's at ground level, to prevent any sort of like 60-year flood type stuff where the water's coming up from the Aberjona there into the parking lot and over the top of the ledge there? Is there anything we can do to do any sort of water prevention of flow into there that we could do to protect that?
The only time that floor flooded since I've been in Reading was back in 2006. It was in May of 2006, a few months after I started in Reading, and the field house floor flooded out. And the reason it flooded out is all the area drains from the new building had not been tied in completely. So once that was all tied in, we have not had any kind of flooding problem down there. Now, that's not to say there could be, some sort of 200-year storm that rolls in or anything like that, but we've seen some pretty serious weather over the last 19 years that I've been in Reading, so I'm pretty confident we're in good shape.
I remember April 2006. My house, and I walked down in my basement and had 3 feet of water in my house the first day I moved in, so I remember that storm. So,
I remember it all too well. A nice way to get home to Reddit.
yeah. Okay. All right, so any other questions or comments? Okay, so we put this on for a vote so we could provide guidance as well to town meeting with this topic. So I do note that the article does not specify any specific dollar number. Has there been any conversation between you and the town manager about that? And is the town meeting going to be told this particular dollar number?
So in the materials that I think are going to be published today, it's going to have the $3 million number in there too. That was discussed last night. So Sharon was updating that.
Okay. So then I'm going to move that the school committee vote to recommend Article 15, which is the Fieldhouse article, with the updated number of $3 million to town meeting.
Second.
Seconded by Carla. Okay, any further discussion? All right, let's go to the roll call, and starting with Sarah.
Yes.
Okay, and Carla?
Yes.
And Aaron?
Yes.
And Tom, yes, it passes 4-0. So, thank you, gentlemen, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great work in getting all this stuff together.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, Joe.
All right.
Okay, so we will now move on to the next topic in our agenda, which is new business, is the 2024 MCAS results presentation. And I think, Dr. Milczewski, you're going to start with this one as well, is that correct?
I am. And Todd, do we have the updated one?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Perfect. All right, well, switching topics from Fieldhouse Floor to MCAS. Don't have a smooth transition.
Sports and academics come together all the time around
There
here.
you go. Listen to Todd.
We're a well-rounded.
We're a well-rounded district.
Don't let your foot stick.
Yeah, then the next one, we're gonna have a performance come up here soon and do a little song and dance, so we'll be good to go.
Savvy, so I wasn't that creative, but I'm excited to share out 2024 MCAS district level data review. So tonight I'll be speaking for probably just about 15-20 minutes of an overview of some of the data. In your packet, you should be able to find a ton more information with an appendix of data, and also on DESE's website, you can also access a lot more data too. A couple of points I want to make before I dive in, and I would emphasize this if our results were I felt were positive or were not as positive. This is one metric, right? This is, if you look at that at the student level, the school level, the district level, this is one measure, I think, of academic progress. So we want to make sure that we emphasize that. And I'd also like to emphasize too that there is, in any large-scale assessment, there's going to be things that we are, or hopefully there's things that you are encouraged by, and also areas to grow. And I think you'll see that tonight, that we'll be sharing some things that we think are really encouraging, and points to recognize and celebrate, and some things that we know that we have to commit to making sure we can turn around and improve too. So with that, I'm going to lead with what I think are like the 4 positive headlines that I think I am encouraged by, just to lead with those quick, and then we'll get into the bulk of the presentation. First thing, I am really encouraged by what we're seeing with student growth. So you'll see before I name this specifically, if you're familiar with the metric SGP, basically what happens if all of us scored a 240 last year, then we look at now that's our like-performing peers, and we say what percentage the next year, what percentage of students did you outperform who were in that same pod of like-performing peers? 50 average growth, right? We're really encouraged that RPS was only one of 16 districts across the state to have all 3 school levels, so elementary, middle, and high school, with SGPs above 50 in both math and ELA. Wow. The reason why I think that's encouraging, the fact that you are seeing high growth at scale, right? Not just at one pocket of the district, not just elementary, just high school, but again, all grade levels and across both content areas, and again, one of 16. 2, we're excited about some of the things that we're seeing in math. Right? We know that the district has made a lot of investments over the last decade in math, in curriculum, now more recently in coaching and professional development. We are excited that elementary students set a district record in math achievement, with 66% of students meeting or exceeding expectation, which continued a 4-year trend of annual increases in achievement. I will share, not only is that obviously that's our district record, but also like to recognize that shatters what we were pre-pandemic, which I know has been a challenge for a lot of districts to get back up to that pre-pandemic level. In middle school, we are not quite there with where we were pre-pandemic achievement, but with an SGP of 59, which for those of you who follow this closely is a really high SGP, and increasing our students in meeting exceeding math by 10% from last year, or 10 percentage points, we feel like we are getting closer to pre-pandemic levels and on an upward trend. So really encouraged by what we think is some of our investments in math are really starting to pay dividends in student achievement. Parker, really excited to celebrate Parker. So Parker is one of 4 middle schools across the state to be named as a school of recognition. This is for high student growth and achievement. And I want to contextualize this with where we were last year. So if I go up a couple of slides, you'll see here, and I'll have to admit to the community, I was just told I need glasses. And so this is really, I was stubborn for years. And I haven't, they all know I haven't bought them yet. So this is
You and me both.
this is making that very public.
62, yep.
What's that?
62.
So I think what we wanted to emphasize was last year. So in 2023, one of the things that we were excited about with the data was that 6 of our 8 schools set school records in school accountability percentile, which I'll get into what that means, but that's generally a metric that combines both growth and achievement and a small amount of chronic absenteeism. For 6 of our 8 schools to set school records in 1 year was really encouraging for us last year. There were 2 schools that did not set school records. One of them was Coolidge. If you can see Coolidge, they went from the 94th percentile in 2022 to the 90th. Okay, that's one, they were pretty high, right? That was one of our schools that didn't set a school record. They did set their school record in 2022. The other school was Parker, which when you see Parker's in the 62nd percentile last year. When you compare all of our schools last year, so going down the list, 89th percentile, 87th, 81st, 92nd, 88, 90, 62, and then 85th, there's a pretty significant difference from where Parker was last year to the rest of the district, which now seeing Parker jumping back up to 76% percentile is really encouraging. I would just like to give, and the reason I'm encouraged about that is I think that there was, I think Parker's a great school. I think there's some really great things happening at Parker, and I don't think those student achievement data reflected some of the great teachers that we have or some of the great things that we have happening in the building. And I'm excited that last year they had such significant increases, and I think the staff is confident that they are going to continue these in the years to come. So kudos to the Parker community too. And you'll see there's a lot of schools of recognition for elementary school level, but I think you only see 1 of 4 at the middle school level. 1, because there's less middle schools, but 2, if the middle school's hard sometimes to kind of get things back on track when you see sort of a regression in student outcomes as well. So kudos to the Parker staff. This is probably the one I'm most excited about, and I'm most excited about for the future. So the headline being the district's young, we made these, not ChatGPT, but district's youngest learners set the bar high with top percentile scores in ELA and math. You know that we would like to be, and I think everyone in our community would like us to be, a district that achieves in the 90-something percentile, and that's not always where we have been in achievement. But our grade 3 students performed the 95th percentile in ELA achievement, which is awesome, and 98th percentile in math compared to 320 statewide districts. So that puts them, they were 7th in math achievement out of 320 and 17th in ELA. We are excited about that because we know that there's some great things happening in our elementary schools. There's been a ton of conversations up here around curriculum, around assessment, around various interventions, screening. There's a lot happening at the elementary level, and we feel confident that the work happening there is sustainable for this to kind of become the norm of the level of achievement and not just a sort of an anomaly with one cohort. So we think the future is very bright, and as you know, if you get students on track in 3rd grade, you know the research for them what that looks like for their future trajectory. So this, for me, is the one that I am probably the most excited about. So and kudos to all of our 3rd grade teachers and all the early education teachers who contributed to this too. So now, away from the headlines, back to sort of what the presentation is going to be tonight. First, we're going to give some context around the results. What are we seeing statewide? How does this compare to maybe what we've seen historically in Reading? I'll give a couple of the highlights, which I just gave you the kind of the overview headline, talk about some of the areas of focus for our district, and then open it up to questions from you all as well. First, piece of context, statewide results. So again, this is not Reading specific. You'll see the next 2 slides statewide, this slide ELA, next slide math. The state likes to compare, we've had a couple of webinars, the state likes to compare to how did we do when compared to last year, but then also how did we do when compared to pre-pandemic. I think if you look at sort of ELA, unfortunately, statewide, there's some, I would think, sizable drops in the percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations by grade level compared to last year, and still a major gap between where students are now and where they were pre-pandemic, which is obviously really concerning to me.
Some of those are abysmal.
Some of those are abysmal, really concerning, right? I think that's when we talk about the data, I share the context for 1 of 2 reasons. One, when we see some of our positive growth, it is, some of that's different than what we're seeing statewide. But two, like the work that Tom's leading and the team, like with the advocacy next week, I mean, there's a lot of work that has to happen statewide to make sure that we are getting our students back to the level of proficiency where they need to be. Math, the drop-offs not as significant as they were in ELA by grade level, generally looking around like 1 percentage point and compared to 2023, but still, the gap between where our students are now and where they were pre-pandemic is alarming. So
That's across the state.
That's across the state, yeah.
Okay.
Those are abysmal numbers. We don't have 50% of our kids at any grade level across the state meeting or exceeding in the math MCAS. The same, ELA too, there wasn't one in ELA either above 50%. That's ridiculous.
So we have work to do statewide. I talked about percentiles. This situates this. I just show this just for people to be able to situate where we are. As the community looks at those numbers, here's the weighting formula. You see that there's a column for those who have the EL progress indicator and those who don't. In all of our schools, we do not yet have enough students to be in the category with the EL progress indicator. We are close for this year, so our accountability formula may shift next year, but for this year, our weighting is the weighting on the right without data for the EL progress indicator. And that was just broken down for high school and elementary school. A little bit of context sort of on where do we stand then looking at sort of statewide achievement. We broke this down by grade level and then what number we are out of blank districts across the state. I've already shared with you grade 3. We are 17th out of 320 in ELA, 7th out of 320 in math. I think we're encouraged. I'm going to skip grade 4 for a second and come back to that. We are really encouraged, I think, again, to be in the range of 20, 30s, 40s. We go grade 5, grade 6, and then we obviously know that those numbers sort of, go up in the 50s and 60s as we get to 8th and 10th grade. We feel confident if we can get all of our students at higher levels of achievement at younger grades, that will we believe that we can continue that on. Now, 4th grade sticks out, right? I think 4th grade sticks out because you say compared to the state, like there's a significant gap between where we are and compared to the state in 3rd grade, 5th grade, 6th compared to the 4th, and we agree. I would also like to name the note in the bottom, which is interesting, is last year we were as 3rd graders, we were 123rd in ELA. And you see now that we are 73rd. And then last year, we are 96th in math, and this year we're 83rd. So while those students have made up some ground compared to the state, while those students also had SGPs above 50, still that gap was pretty significant. So we also recognize there's a lot of work to be done with that cohort of students to make sure that we can get them on track sort of before it gets even more difficult as time goes on, because that cohort's in a much different position than our 3rd grade cohort. The other thing we like to do is compare ourselves to our 24 FinCom comparable communities. We know we talk a lot about state comparisons. We think these communities are probably more like us. You'll see this on the left-hand side, so on the y-axis looking at both either high school, middle school, or elementary school, and then across the top, across a couple different variables, ELA scaled score, which is achievement, ELA SGP, student growth, math scaled score, again achievement, or math SGP, which is student growth. You can see that's our ranking in bold in that category compared to the 24 communities. And then the number in parentheses is where we were last year. So generally, I would say, I think it's fair to say we're falling in the middle of the pack, generally, give or take, in terms of both achievement and growth in math and ELA by all grade levels in comparison to our FinCom communities. So some of the highlights, again, I shared, quickly talked about some of the highlights in student growth percentile, just to pull out a couple of pieces of data on that too. All of our levels above SGPs above 50 in ELA and math. Middle school math at an SGP of 59, which is a pretty significant increase from 43.2, which is a number that we are not okay with in 2023. And then again, one of 15 districts to have SGPs above 50 in both math and ELA. Looks like we copied that one twice. We're really proud of that one, I guess. So, but again, encouraged by the growth that we're seeing from student souls level. You can see that when you compare this slide, comparing that over time, if you want to look at historical trends. But I think generally, this looks more positive than maybe where we've been in terms of student growth. We really like the numbers of having SGPs of 56 and 58 respectively in ELA and math SGPs for our elementary schools. And I'd also like to give a couple of shout outs. You see in bold on those are historical records. So you see Barrow set a historical record with math SGP, and also did Wood End with an math SGP of close to 70, which is really
astounding. That's astounding, yeah.
But if you look back on Wood End's fifth grade data, there is a trend there in fifth grade data at Wood End and SGP. So, but those numbers of SGPs in the 60s is something that we're really encouraged by. Again, similarly, just breaking the SGPs, if you're interested to look down by, this is not a school-specific presentation, but again, if you wanted to see the schools, high-level SGP here too, and again, really encouraged by Parker's SGP of 61, which is higher than really it's been over the last couple of years, but also a school record. And you'll see also, I'd like to say, some people will say, well, they've kind of closed the gap with maybe where Coolidge has been. I would also like to note that the SGP at Coolidge is still above 50, right? So our students are still growing at a faster rate than their peers.
Above
Their
55,
peers.
yeah. It's a strong number, yeah.
Yeah. I put this in there we put this in there for more of your like FYI. We think there's a story to be told behind like all of like, why are we getting the results that we're getting? Why are we seeing positive growth in student growth percentiles? You've heard all of these time and time again. The story of, high quality curriculum, the story of quality professional development, leveraging systems and structures like, effective teams, peer observations, coaching and feedback. You've heard all of those things before. We added in some of those for you tonight in case, for those in the community who are kind of just newly following along. But I don't think tonight we're going to go through all of sort of the story behind why we think we're getting some of the results that we're getting there too. Math, really encouraged by what we're seeing with math in elementary math, SGP of 58.3, third year in a row with an SGP of over 50, which shows me that consistently we're getting high growth with the practices and the curriculum that we have in place now. That high growth is now starting to translate into high achievement, which is what we want ultimately, which I shared, again, a district record of 66% meeting exceeding in math in 2024. And middle school math, SGP of 59, we're really encouraged by. And I think that the middle school did some really good work. And I'd like to shout out Parker too for a lot of like standards alignment, scope and sequencing and things like that I think made a huge difference in the percent increase here in percent proficient and growth. Highlights of math, you can look SGP kind of over the years if you'd like to see kind of comparison wise, but those, we haven't seen numbers like that, the 58 for the elementary and the 59 for the middle, and encouraged by, kind of those two numbers showing us we're seeing some good levels of growth. I talked about historically, where we were with elementary, but again, middle school, we're kind of creeping back up to where we wanted, pre-pandemic levels too. And broken down by school, you can see many of those schools set sort of recent records. If you look especially in math in terms of percent proficiency, I don't dare try to read those, but I think it was 3 out of the 5 set recent records compared back to 2018. So not only are we seeing some improved achievement at the district level, but we're also seeing that when you sort of break that down by school.
It's 4 out of 5.
4 out of 5, even better. Yeah. And then math SGPs again of 58 and 59, sort of that scale we're really encouraged by as well.
But again, 64 and 69, yeah, okay.
If you can see that better than me, if there's anything you want to call out, go for it.
Blind as a bat, you're good.
That's bad, that's bad. I told my wife I had 20/20 before I went for the appointment.
You and I told my wife I had 12/20 before I went for the appointment.
So, and then showing the percentage of just us versus the state and percent proficiency. While that, kind of the middle school level has been a little bit wonky the last couple of years, we see at the elementary level starting to widen that gap between where we are in the state and also this year, a pretty significant gap with where we are in the state too. Again, not going to go into the sort of factors behind this. I'm sure Sarah would love to talk to them tonight if there's given any questions on it, but the same thing around high quality, professional development, high quality curriculum.
But I'll just, before you go too far, go back a sec. I mean, we need to call out the math coaches in particular, right? I mean, at the middle school levels in particular, we've seen that as a big change from last year. So that was an investment we made as a community to get those 2 positions. We have not had them until last year, right? And we can see almost immediate results as a result. The curriculum was the same curriculum that we had for the 3 years beforehand, essentially, right? So the only change, outside of a couple of teachers maybe, but I mean, which is an important factor too, but the only big change institutionally was the math coaches.
I strongly agree with you there too, and I think it's also a credit to our teachers who really embraced that role, welcomed the coaches in, were receptive to that embedded PD, and I do believe the results are due to that added attention that our teachers were able to receive, conversations about the students in front of them, and, you know, the instructional moves that those kids need. It's a really different type of professional development from a standalone workshop
Yep.
that doesn't connect to your daily practice.
Right. Standards alignment was a big part of it too, if I recall correctly
Yeah.
from some of our conversations, right?
And better use of formative assessments, which we know is key. I think that it's something that we believe really strongly is the key to our success.
I'm really glad you raised those points, and I intended to speak about that tonight too, because I think that the math coaches, if you talk to teachers too, I was talking to an 8th grade teacher who shared that the best form of professional development that she's had in her close to 20-year career was last year having support from a math coach. It helped her to feel like a professional and have a thought partner to support, and she thinks that was a key contributor in her having sort of some of the results that we had saw here too. And I also want to give them credit. There's 2 of them across an entire district, which is really, I know Tom, last year, you had expressed concerns about how would we be able to sort of 2 people handle the scope of work across an entire district, and quite honestly, it's not enough. Like, I think with more, we could continue to make sure these results are sustainable and build on these results, but it's really encouraging to see our return on investment so quickly. So a huge thank you to the math coach as well for their great work.
Yeah, Alyssa Skinner and Lana Montero.
And last kind of piece, again, I highlighted Parker, but just wanted to, again, recognize Parker too. So for their, significant increases in both percent proficiency and SGPs. SGPs of 51.6, which we think will go up with our sort of work this year in ELA, but also 61.7 in math, which is really difficult to find that with a lot of middle schools across the state. So congratulations to Parker for their work. I think that's, it's interesting comparing that historically for Parker too. This slide has both the SGP and ELA in math and percent meeting and exceeding for ELA in math as well. If you are more interested in some of the work that Parker did last year, we presented had a presentation last June of the school committee that outlined especially some of the instructional work happening at Parker. And there are some lessons learned, right? There are some things around that we feel like we can now scale into some of our other schools. So I think one thing in particular that we thought was some of our use of Title I funds at Parker, that we are now trying to replicate some of the systems and supports that we put in there at Killam that we think will also kind of bear similar fruit too. And kind of shifting gears from what we know is sort of some of the positive sides of the data to some of what are we focusing on moving forward. The 2 major categories for us are sort of our overall MCAS achievement and performance, and then the achievement gap. Let me start with the overall achievement and performance. It is sort of a sad state of affairs for the state and for to be saying we are celebrating 64% of our students meeting or exceeding expectations, right? That means that there's still 36% of our students who are not where they need to be. Same math, 65% of students are meeting or exceeding expectations, 35 are not. So flipping that or looking at the inverse, I don't think that's a number that any of us can really be comfortable with. Also, seeing that despite significant increases in SGPs, and I just want to emphasize here too, I think those SGPs are really high. And when we look at those SGPs also by subgroup, you'll see similar sort of results in most cases. We haven't reached pre-pandemic levels in most content areas, which reflects that there's still gaps in skills that students have. Our overall achievement and proficiency levels are still in the middle of the pack of kind of FinCom comparable communities. While we think we're closing that gap, especially when you look at our younger learners, we still want to be on the higher end of that, so we have room to grow. And again, our commitment to having all students demonstrate mastery, we have too many students who are in the buckets below. So you'll see on kind of the following slides of further breakdown of sort of where we are not where we need to be, whether that's by level, whether you break that down on the next slide, whether that is for the side. So I'll get back to that one in a minute. Or you break it down by school, which you'll also see that there's spots that we obviously have some gaps to close. As we look at kind of where we are compared to the state too, I know there's been some community members to ask, where are we with percentile ranks overall? So grades 3 to 5, we were higher. We had higher meeting and exceeding percentage higher than 89% of the districts in the state for both ELA and math. And then the middle school level, you're higher than 88% of the districts in the state in ELA and 85 in math. Again, we believe that we can be higher, we believe that we should be higher, we believe that we're on that trajectory. But despite being in the 89th percentile of districts in elementary, there's so many students who are not where they need to be. Which, I'm going to come back to that piece, is kind of the area of like where are the spots where we're not seeing that level of achievement is that in many of our subgroups when you break that down. So we know when we're talking about the achievement gap, we break it down like disaggregating data by a lot of different demographic categories. We see kind of this year, while in most cases our SGPs were above 50 in ELA and math for our subgroups. And in many cases, some of these subgroups also set either historical records or kind of had the best mark that they've had in recent years. As an example, all elementary groups had SGPs above 50 in both math and ELA, except for our Black and African American students in math and ELA, and our low-income students in math and ELA. All middle school students had SGPs above 50 in math, and most were above 50 in ELA, except for students with IEP and our Hispanic/Latino students. And then, so like despite what I think that's sort of more of a positive narrative, you spin down the bottom two bullets. High school subgroups did not demonstrate as high of a growth as the elementary and middle school students. Also, despite SGPs above 50, this is the headline to me, the gap in achievement between subgroups and all students has persisted and in many cases widened. So if you look here, like even, I'll give an example. If you look at our, okay, let's look on with you.
Yeah.
You want this, Tom? Here. This can unplug for a
You
second.
mind?
Yeah. That's why you have the big one. You can unplug for a second and survive.
Thanks. So an example of this, right? If we look at even something as our high need students on this, you look on the right, had an SGP of 55 last year, which is, compared to where that had been as an SGP, is the highest that it's been historically. Yet, when you look at the next slide, our high need students, still only 35% are advanced or proficient. So it's like, even though we had a pretty high SGP, that gap between 35% proficiency and all students 66 is still pretty significant. Same with students with disabilities. If we look at our students with disabilities with an SGP of 55 and average SGP in math, yet still you translate that to a historical record and achievement, still only 20% of our elementary students are on IEPs or meeting or exceeding expectations. So you can see why that gap, sort of even despite some encouraging, trends in growth, it's still not enough to close the gap of where we need to be. Similar trend that we're going to see in middle school when you're looking by group. I think the one that sticks out to me the most alarming is if you look at average SGP in math for our Black and African American students, 62.4, which if you had asked me before the year, our middle school students, again, a small group of only 27 of our Black and African American students would have an SGP of 62.4, we'd say we'd really encouraged. But then when you look at what does that translate to, our Black and African American students meeting or exceeding math expectations in math is only 11%. So that's where this gets, challenging. Even though we've seen some encouraging trends in growth generally, these gaps in achievement are persisting or widening in many cases. And at high school, it's a little bit of a different story. We actually had some spots where our growth wasn't above 50, below 50 for some of our subgroups, which is obviously, an area of significant, concern for us, an area we need to have growth. All of our SGPs, we believe, by subgroup should also be above 50. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of the last part is what are we doing around some of the gap closing, but I want to pause there. Is there any just questions or thoughts on any of the data before I kind of go into that last leg of talking about some of the strategies to close some of those gaps that we were talking about? Aaron.
Go ahead.
Okay. What subgroup do multi-language learners fall into?
So they are only on if we have a category that is above sort of 20 is the number. So in some cases, and also we know that level ones don't take the test as well. So in many of these cases, they aren't represented. I will say where they are, part of the category is high needs, which is students with disabilities, MLs, and any economically disadvantaged students. But that's why you don't see its own standalone category.
Okay. And level one is their first year here, or what is
newcomer?
the level?
Yeah,
newcomer.
Yep.
Okay.
It's based on English proficiency.
So they don't
that's
take,
generally your newcomer.
They don't have to, if they arrive here in third grade, they don't take the MCAS that year?
Correct. Students' first year in the country, they do not take the.
But their second year, they do?
They do.
Okay. And I know it would be too identifying, but are you looking at, in terms of the Black subgroup, Black African American, are you breaking that out in terms of when those students entered the district?
We do. We look at when they've entered, how long they've been here, and in order to ascertain, like, have they been in programming here in Reading since kindergarten, or are they students who started with us in 9th grade?
Okay. And yeah, because I feel like that would impact likely those scores. You know, all our talk of high quality curriculum, if students haven't had years of that, then even so, the numbers are terrible. And then students with disabilities, does that include students who are doing the portfolio version and not taking the? No, this is just students who took the exam. Okay. And that's part of a conversation of their IEP, whether they qualify for?
Correct. That's a decision made by the IEP team.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I think Sarah had a hand raised.
Sarah's, yeah, okay, I see your hand raised. Please jump in.
A couple of things. One, I think it's really exciting to see the student growth percentiles. What would be more helpful, I think, maybe moving forward, I know it's busy, but helpful to see what does that mean? So like, what are the scores that we're seeing within that group, and what was the growth percentile as well? So we're not just seeing a percentage, so that we understand like, where do we come from and where are we heading? So it was kind of one point for maybe moving forward in subsequent years. And then building on Erin's point about some of the subgroups, kind of understanding, you know, I know we can't do, given the numbers in some of these cohorts, we can't, you know, publish this data or put it in the packet, but internally kind of looking at how long have they been in the district, how long have they been on an IEP, and those kinds of things, so we can really contextualize the growth and then understand what the path forward is for helping them to achieve greater in the future.
The only observation I'll make is the one I always make, and maybe it's in the appendix and I haven't seen it yet. Cohort, yeah. What did they look like from 3rd to 4th, 4th to 5th? Yeah, so, but I love it in numbers as opposed to graphs, so I love the upward trends in a lot of those. There's a little bit of yin yang in some of them, but we definitely want to see more cohort type. I definitely want to see more cohort type analysis. You know, where were they in? So like the example you showed with the 4th graders, right? Where you know, that was not quite absolute performance per se, but there's an equivalence there to a degree, right? So if they were in 3rd and they were at 50%, and now that same cohort is at 60%, then there's some positive stuff to look at there as well. Not just the growth, but the absolute performance in that's going there. So that's one thing. Going back to the FinCom peers as an example, and I know we've highlighted the fact that we've chosen Amplify, but we haven't implemented Amplify yet, right? And it's clear in looking at some of that, while we have made progress in the ELA space, we are where we are because we did not have a middle school ELA curriculum, right? A lot of home-built stuff, and people were doing the best they could, but, you know, we see what the benefit of a standard curriculum is in the math numbers and in the elementary numbers, and I'm looking forward to seeing the benefit in the middle school ELA numbers in the next couple of years as well. And so I wanted to just thank, I know a lot of the middle school teachers were involved in a lot of the work last year to pick that, and hopefully they're excited and they're seeing some of the benefit already, but I'm looking forward to seeing how that changes. My head right now is next year I want to see everything in 6 or better. So I want to be a top quartile next year, and I think that's fully achievable with all the work you all have done. You know, we're better than we were. I have this chart from 4 or 5 years ago, and it was all red. So we're much better than we were. But we keep striving, right? Keep striving, continuous improvement, and that's been the focus, I think, even for this presentation, is continuous improvement. So just let's keep moving. We got work to do, but we made some great progress. So with that said, what is the next step, Tom?
Great. So I'm just going to go through these last couple slides quick too, though, just to emphasize. I think it's important, like part of the reason why I think we're starting to see some encouraging trends in growth and achievement is around like tier 1 practices, better use of assessment data, higher quality curriculum materials, better professional development, better systems of teacher collaboration. But I also feel like where I feel like we need to continue to grow is to continue to think about what are our specific strategies that we're using to target certain populations or groups of students where we know we're not seeing the levels of achievement that we want to see. So you'll see here, kind of a broad slide around what are we doing to close some gaps. Yes, it's all the tier 1 work, particularly a lot of our data work, but there's also some things happening within different buckets that we think are important to highlight for our community. I think there's a lot of really exciting work happening in our MLL department. So on this slide, you see a couple things highlighted too, is one, expanding coaching, SEI coaching by our ML coordinator to support teachers. That is job embedded coaching for teachers, which we know has really moved the needle in a lot of ways. Collaborative meetings between literacy specialists and ESL teachers to review additional supports. And then I also, upcoming potential curriculum adoption in 25-26, which we think is long overdue. The one I also really like here, which Karen's talked a lot about, is a student success plan will be created by a school-based team for every MLL student who's not making adequate progress, which is kind of a metric determined by DESE on access. So we think there's a lot of things happening to target our MLL population. I want to give credit to Karen Hall and her leadership for, I think, really building the program out over the last couple of years. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on this. We know we've had a lot of conversations over the years of what are we doing to try to improve outcomes for our students on IEPs? What have our program reviews look like? What are some of the new roles that we've put in place? I think these are probably ongoing conversations that we'll have throughout the year, but we feel like we need to continue to implement the findings from the special education program review, and we know we're getting a big one soon, and continue to leverage a lot of those roles that we have, like an inclusion specialist, a transition specialist, program coordinators to help us be able to move the needle for students as well. We've had a lot of conversations around what are we doing to address achievement gaps for our Black and African American students. We actually linked in an article that we saw this week, Sarah found from Ed Week, which talked about the impact on students of having counselors of color. We feel like we were having, a conversation with our team of that's something you'll see sort of in the article too. Having students have someone who in their building, a counselor of color who they can go to connect with is not only huge for a sense of belonging, but is critical in academic achievement. This is only year 3 of those roles, and you'll see here, one of the things that we're trying to do is really expand their role and be able to support the academic work of our students. So that's you want to have quick reactions to some of the MCAS data sometimes, but you also want to make sure that we're mindful of the change that's going to move the needle or the long sustained changes, and we feel like we need to continue to maximize the impact of that role and continue how to figure out gap closing. I think that's something we have not done well for our METCO program, is figure out how do we close, particularly for students who are new to the program, how do we ensure if there's gaps coming in that we have a way that we can at scale close gaps. And I think that's a challenge for us right now we haven't quite figured out. And I think one of the groups that maybe is a harder one for us to figure out sometimes too is thinking about how are we going to improve outcomes for our low-income students. I do want to say a couple things that are important for us. One is ensuring that our students are attendance, our efforts on attendance we think is one, because we see that's a population that has struggled with attendance. So making sure that we are investing in the programs, the supports, the resources to increase attendance. 2, free breakfast programs. We know a lot of our economically disadvantaged students are also coming in without access to high quality breakfast. So that sort of is something that may move the needle for us. And we talked a lot about in our last meeting about summer math modules. We need to figure out how to kind of scale up some of that individualized, tutoring, support, programming for kids that maybe, extension of school time that allows us to close some of those gaps that maybe we see as consistent. So I think something that our team needs to continue to do better is to continue to define what does it look like for us to achieve, close the achievement gap for certain populations. I think we're doing it by a lot of focus on tier 1, and I think we need to continue to refine what this looks like sort of in more specific buckets as well. So I would just like to, as I close the presentation, just like to continue to thank all of the staff for their role in helping our students to both grow and achieve. This is, if you ask our teachers, this is obviously not the only way that we're measuring how our students are doing, but I think there's a lot in here that we're really encouraged by and reflects some, some high levels of growth and achievement for our students.
Any other feedback or comments? Tom, you and I talked a little bit about the gap closing stuff earlier today, right? That to me that's going to move the needle for everything and everybody. And we have always talked about, we don't want the gap closing to mean that the top comes down, and we're proving the top is not coming down now. but we're not moving the bottom up fast enough. So we need to keep the top going up with all the initiatives we're doing, like Math Pathways and things like that. But definitely need intense strategic focus on, I'm going to say everybody, regardless of what group they're in, that is not able to meet and exceed yet, right? And all of the formative related data we have, what areas do they have the most struggle in? How can we support that the most? What after-school programs, what before-school programs? If we have a captive audience for some other reason, like they're on a bus for 2 hours, how can we use that time, so it's productive and not just sitting there? Anything else that we can think about and do. And I know it's going to come down to money at some point in time, so we're going to have some maybe difficult conversations or whatever to figure that out. But ultimately, we're going to be measured by how we help the least among us, for lack of a better way to say it. I'm looking forward to seeing some further strategy conversations on that, right? I think it's a little too early to say this is what we're going to do. But as we think about goals and whatnot, and we sort of think about building the library of things that work, right? We should be looking at some of the stuff. And I'll remind this group as well that a couple years ago, we all listened to a podcast of a district in Missouri who started with a 22% meeting and exceeding or lower. It was maybe it's even in the teens, if I recall correctly. That district had all sorts of the disadvantages that any district possibly could ever have. And by the time they were done, 3 years or 4 years later, they're at 90+%, everybody meeting and achieving, no matter what group they were in. So as we continue to work through some of this stuff, reading opens the doors for a lot of this, but it's not the only thing. We just need to continue to figure out what that next step is and what the next step is and what the next step is. And I guess I'll say this as well. I continue to be encouraged by not just you, but by the teachers I see and whatnot that are so bought in, right? This is not a casual thing for any of them. And in a time when teaching is going through a ton of burnout, I feel like we have a lot of teachers that are on fire. So I'm excited by that, and I'm excited by where we're going, but we just need to continue to find that what's the next thing that we can do from an improvement perspective. So thank you all for the time and effort. I do definitely want to see more cohort-related stuff, though, on a go-forward basis. Yeah. Okay, anybody else? No? All right, so we'll move on from that, and we will go to the last topic on our agenda, which is the now posted Ad Hoc Commemorative Advisory Establishment Committee. We have been asked to have a member, either ex officio or designee from the school committee to join what is called ACE. I have no information in terms of when it will meet or how long it's going to take to form. I have some understanding that they're going to be discussing it at one of the next select board meetings in terms of how they're going to select their 2 Reading residents. So our role and responsibility is to decide who the school committee is going to assign. Aaron, you had expressed interest in the past. Sean told me he's willing to do it if we need it to be, and he's also willing for us to say let's designate somebody. I know we all have a collective lot going on, so I'm open to feedback and thoughts from this group that's here, and we can then decide either to appoint somebody or I can reach out to Laura to have her send applicants to us and we can appoint from there. But any feedback, thoughts from the group that's here?
It's really hard to say without knowing what the plan is. Are we talking 1 meeting a month? Are we talking a weekly meeting? I do feel plenty extended at the moment. And the letter indicates they have community members who are interested. Is that how I'm reading that?
We have received a letter that has expressed interest in potentially having more than, yes, a non-school committee member represent the school committee. Yes.
And then that person would report to us, or how does that work?
Theoretically, that person would report back to us at some regular interval, yes. We have done designees in the past, not for, I don't know how to say this without being pejorative of a committee, not for a bigger committee like this, but maybe like the celebration committee, we had Blodgett, Mr. Blodgett as our designee for a while. Select Board has a designee on the audit committee, as an example. So it's not unheard of. It's certainly something we can do. And, and looking around the room and knowing where two of our other members are, I know that we are, and knowing myself, we are very much extended at this point in time. So I'm not opposed at all to saying we'll, interview candidates, for lack of a better way to say it.
Is this a 1 year?
There's no duration as far as, let me see if it says about what the sunset time is. 12-month, it says 12-month period. Sunset said 12 months.
In the select board meeting that it was a 1 year.
Yeah, so the sunset, it doesn't have a start date, which is part of the problem. So, this committee will report to the select board every 2 months on the progress of the committee until goals are reached. It'll provide the select board with a report exploring the best way for the town to acknowledge and express accountability for the mistreatment experienced by the Russell family, orchestrate and execute the inaugural program, debrief and use insights gleaned from the event as a foundation to inform and shape subsequent programming, submit multiple options for annual program recommendations with rationale along with suggestions for funding mechanisms to the select board within 12 months of the start of the ad hoc committee, unless another date is agreed upon by the select board, and work with the town manager to transfer all information and responsibilities to the town department administrator that will ensure the continuation of the annual program before the ACE committee sunsets. And it says the expectation is that it will be the specified action items outlined will be completed within 12 months. And then accordingly, the committee shall sunset 12 months from the vote date, but may be extended by the select board. So the vote date was back in the summer. So we're actually talking about potentially 9 months or less, unless it's extended by the select board.
If they can actually accomplish that in 9 months.
I'm not sure they can either,
It's
so.
lofty. I am supportive of the mission, but I'm going to say that knowing the push we're making on the policy subcommittee to get a lot of work done this year, and that's often going to fall in the evenings, I'm going to decline.
Okay. Any thoughts from you?
I think if someone on the committee wants it, if Sean wants to be on the committee, I think he should have that opportunity.
Yeah,
first,
he's not here to speak.
And then if he,
He said he would do it, but he'd okay if we voted to have somebody else do it too. But I'll check in with him before we make a
and if
decision.
not, maybe go. I cannot commit to another. So if we can go to, to people who want to be on it, that would be representing us.
Okay.
Fine with that.
Sarah, any thoughts or feedback from you? I'm expecting it's going to be similar feedback.
Unfortunately, my bandwidth is non-existent, but I think if Sean is interested, I would defer to him on that, maybe. It's hard without more details for any of us to really kind of evaluate it, unfortunately.
Okay. So I'll caucus on, and dependent upon that, notify the committee of what the next steps are,
Yeah.
right? And if it's Sean, that's the answer. If Sean realizes with something else going on with work or other things, including Killam, because he's on that as well, that he can't do it, then I'll talk to Laura about posting on our behalf to get or receive some of the applicants that are being received appropriately. Okay?
Yes.
Okay. That closes our agenda. Are there any further motions?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion
Second.
by Carla, second by Aaron. Roll call. Sarah?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Tom? Yes. We are hereby adjourned at 8:52.